Welcome to another episode of the STR Sisterhood. I'm your host, Stacey St. John, and I am so darn delighted to be spending some time with you today. Now, before we jump into this episode, I want to share a quote with you that I recently read. And it says, "The fewer mistakes you make twice, the easier life is." Those awesome words come to us from tennis champion Martina Navratilova. Now, in this episode, we are sitting down with Biata Lawrence, and we are talking through some of the most popular myths that we hear online, and we are dispelling them for you. The biggest takeaway from this episode is, my friend, if anyone tells you you have to do something in order to be successful in short-term rentals, they're wrong. There are so many ways that you can run your business successfully. And so we're talking through, again, some of the things that you might have heard other people say, and we're sharing our opinions on them as well. So without further ado, let's dive into my conversation with Biata. Biata, we are going to have so much fun. We are here to talk about myths in the short-term rental space, and I cannot wait to get your feedback. But first, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So first, before we jump in, let's have you just share a little bit about you with our listeners, maybe who you are and what you do.
My name is Beata Lawrence. I live in North Carolina, and up until a couple months ago, my entire portfolio was in North Carolina. So I started off as a self-manager and turned into a real estate agent, which then turned into a full-service property manager, which is how I operate today. So I have a mix of self-managed properties that my husband and I owned and a portfolio of properties that I manage for other folks. And most of them are in North Carolina, but most recently, I am managing a property in Whitefish, Montana.
Which is just a small hop, skip, and a jump away.
Yes. Not very intentional, but circumstances pointed themselves in that direction. So we took the opportunity and we went well with it.
I love that you're doing that. And, obviously we're not going to get into remote management today, but even in North Carolina, you've got properties peppered throughout the state, right? So it is simply a matter of location. Maybe that's a myth we should talk about, but
that's true.
A lot of people think I have to have a property in my backyard in order to make it work. And that's simply not true.
It's just not true. I've actually, ironically, this past February, so 7-8 months ago, whatever it is at this point, is the first time I had a property that is within 30 minutes of my home. For the last 9 years before that, my closest properties were 90 minutes away, and most of them are anywhere from 2 to 3 hours away. And I started my journey in self-management and in full service property management, essentially doing remote management.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be done. And I find that when you start off with remote management, even when you have properties that perhaps could be in your backyard, you treat them as if they're remote.
Yeah,
right?
No, in fact, ironically, the one that's relatively close by is only 10 minutes from my son's high school. And I can honestly say, I don't think I've stepped foot in the property in almost 3 months.
Yeah.
I mean, I do when I need to, but I don't need to very often.
Yeah.
I have a great team, and I trust that team to manage that as if they were all the other properties that I've managed. So I don't treat it any differently just because it happens to be close by.
Yeah, exactly right. I love it. Okay, so I'm excited to have this conversation because as you and I were prepping for this interview, we both were talking about some things that perhaps we hear in the industry that we have some different opinions on.
Yes, ma'am.
And we're excited to bring them forth. We also, we're huddling really quickly before we pushed record, and maybe I should just give a blanket statement. We're not here to tick anyone off. And so if we share something with you that's in direct opposition of what you've heard on other people's podcasts or from someone else, just know, we're here to share our experience with you, but we'll dive in. And Beata, I'm curious, what would you say is the number one myth that you want to dispel that you're hearing in the industry that maybe we should talk about?
The one that makes me laugh the most is the myth of white linens and white towels. And that you have to. And so this is our disclaimer. If you prefer to, be our guest. That's the beauty of this industry. You can really, truly run it the way you want to run it. And if something is really important to you or it's the way you prefer it, that's totally great. That's the beauty. Like, we don't all have to have the same types of properties and they don't look the same and they're not going to have the same vibe. But it really, really bugs me when I hear, especially a new operator, ask these questions and then you get this flurry of you have to. And that's really part of the conversation I want to have to you today, is dispel some of the you have tos. So for me, it's the whites. And I actually started in this industry before the STR Facebook groups existed, before there was a single STR podcast. So I didn't have gurus to turn to. I just made it up as I went along. And for the most part, I still, to this day, all these years later, I still operate. I set up my homes the way I would want them to be as a guest and what's important to me. And as I've watched people set theirs up, obviously there's some differences, right? There are a couple of things I ask my guests to do that somebody would be appalled at. And then there's other things that they ask their guests to do that I'm like, oh, I would never do that. Right. And it's okay. But the whites for me is an operational issue. My background is in corporate. My background is supply chain management, logistics, operations, and profitability is so important to me. And the whites for me dig into your profitability. And my portfolio from the word boo has always been 6-figure plus properties. I kind of fell into that sort of by accident. And then I kept going with that. So my properties in peak season go anywhere from $1,000 to sometimes upwards of $2,000 a night. And I have never one time ever used a white towel, a white sheet, a white duvet, like nothing white. Wah, wah, wah. And I have hundreds of 5-star reviews and reviews that say people love my bedding and my sheets are very comfortable and all of those great things. And my cleaners love our sheets. And guess what? I use patterned sheets and patterned quilts.
Oh my gosh.
I was because they're operationally easier and I would never leave a stained sheet, obviously, but those types of, it's just easier. It's just easier to get stains out. They're less noticeable. If you have the faintest of discoloration, you'll never notice on a patterned quilt. You'll never notice on patterned sheets, but on bright white sheets or bright white quilts, it's like a beacon of light that you just have no choice but to replace. And so to me, that's I watch people on Facebook over and over again saying, I'm replacing my towels every 4 turns, every 2 months, whatever it is. And I'm thinking, I refresh my towels once a year.
Right.
And they're beautiful and they're fluffy and like they provide a great guest experience. And no one has ever said they don't think my properties are luxe enough because there's no white.
Well, and that is, I think, one of the things, again, you and I have both heard gurus say, in order to create a luxury experience, you have to have white linens. And as you've just dispelled this myth, that's just simply not true. Now, to your point, you find it easier to use the pattern. Talk to us about your towels. You use gray towels, correct?
It depends on the color scheme. So, for example, on the coast, typically navy. I have a riverfront log cabin that has lots of browns and greens. So typically we use hunter green there. I have a really cool little property that's all black, white, and pink. That's
I know. I love that.
So in one bathroom, we have pink towels. In the other bathroom, we have black towels. I have a Wolfpack cottage. So Wolfpack is the NC State. So we mix with red towels and black towels. So really, I try to find obviously dark colors. I try to avoid, pale beiges or anything like that for the same reason. I try to stick with something that's saturated, but I go with the theme of the home and I incorporate it so it feels very intentional and it feels part of the design as opposed to, and I certainly have had charcoal, like, yeah, right now I don't know if we happen to have any, but I'm sure we do somewhere. But I think when you incorporate the overall design and feel of the home and you use a colored towel, then it just feels intentional as opposed to you trying to, I don't know, whatever people assume that you're trying to be cheap or you're trying to, I don't know, whatever the experience is. But for me, I feel it works from a design standpoint too.
Now,
and I think it pops in the pictures too.
Well, and I love that you talk about incorporating the color of the towels into the design of the home. So they're not just random colors that you can find on sale. It's very intentional about what color of towel you're using in that bathroom, right? Mm-hmm. I'm curious, where do you buy your colored towels from? Because we all need situations, we all have situations where we're going to need to replace something, right? So do you buy them online? Do you buy them at Target? What's your favorite go-to spot?
I try across the board, first and foremost, Costco. If it exists at Costco, I buy it at Costco.
Yeah.
But when you're particular about the color, oftentimes I can't find them at Costco. Mm-hmm. So usually Amazon, I usually try to find like not the ultra luxe, because again, operational, you don't want super, super thick towels that will take 45 years to dry. Yeah. We're turning these places and we want to turn them fast. So you have to find that sweet spot of the towels that are going to feel good, look good, dry quickly. Yeah. Right? I'm always thinking operations. So for me, despite the fact that I'm not an official designer by trade, but I do design all of my own properties and the ones from my clients, and I think I do a pretty good job. But I will always err on operations slightly over aesthetics, where some others would pick aesthetics over operations.
Mm-hmm. I also chuckle along these same lines when I hear people say, well, you'll increase bookings if you have white sheets and towels. I literally just had someone say that 2 days ago to me. And I was like, no, I have to disagree respectfully. So I think it's important that as we are setting up our properties, we're thinking like consumers. And if you're booking a hotel, do you look at the color of the towels, before you book a hotel?
As long as they're clean?
No.
So here's two interesting little tidbits on that. So my portfolio, quite a few of my markets based on size and the actual town it's in. I'm actually in the top 1% of revenue in my market, in multiple markets. And in the couple that I've just recently entered, I'm still in the top 10%. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that, and in 5 different markets. Yeah. So I feel like I could confidently say, no, you do not have to have whites to be at the top of your market. But as a guest, it wasn't this summer, it was the summer before, I was meeting with our nuclear family and my husband's best friend's nuclear family, and we were getting together. They have much younger kids. So I have teens, they had kind of littles. And we were looking for location and a few amenities and all the normal things. And the place I found had all whites. And I was truly hesitating. And had I found any other option, I actually would have picked the other option because the whites stress me out as a guest. Because again, I spent a lot of time in these Facebook groups, and then you see things like, someone left 2 stains on my white towels. Should I charge them? That's stressful as a guest. Yeah. So here I am and I don't remember what the kids' ages were at the time, but let's say they were 5 and 7, roughly. I'm like, don't touch the towels. Don't rub them on your body. Don't use this. It's like, that's so stressful as a guest. So I don't know. I mean, for anybody who's willing to listen, as a guest, not only do I not look for whites, I actually find whites to be stressful. There's a lot of high pressure about whites. And I sure as heck don't want you to have a white sofa or a white armchair, because then I feel like I can't use your furniture. And I'm not a dirty or filthy person, but
right.
It just, white is stressful.
It is. And I will say, as a consumer, every night and every morning I wash my face. Well, when I wash my face at night, it is shocking to me how I can wash my face and then I go to dry it off and there's makeup on the towel. And I'm like, wow, I thought I did a really good job washing my face. Clearly, I'm off my rocker here, but it is just a nature of the beast. You've got leftover residue. So if you are going to have whites, make sure you have makeup towels that are dark in color for your guests to be able to use. All right. So we've dispelled the myth about white linens. What is another myth that you hear in the industry that you want to talk through?
Welcome baskets.
Yes. Let's talk about that. What again about welcome baskets?
I did welcome baskets again, 2017, I think, and I'm near positive I was not aware of any podcasts or Facebook groups in 2017 for STRs. And I think I actually did it to partner with a local bakery because I really liked them and I wanted to get their business. So I did, and I love their to this day. I buy their coffee in bulk. It's my favorite coffee on the planet. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, oh, it'd be really lovely if I got a little basket for the guests, and it would be a bag of the coffee, and it would be a few pastries and a couple, local. They're very good at doing local jams or, other things. So I basically gave them a budget and said, just fill my little bag with whatever it was. And I did this for 1 year. I did not notice any difference in my reviews. I certainly didn't notice any difference in my bookings. I did notice a difference in my bottom line because it's a cost and it's an expense. And what's fascinating is over that course of the year, more often than not, there was no comment on the welcome bag. Mm-hmm. Some of the time it was kind of discarded and ignored. And then the few times there was a comment, it was like, well, I don't drink coffee. Could I have something else?
Wow.
And along those lines, or we don't eat pastries or what,
yeah.
And so what I started realizing, and I think, and I don't quote me, it's been a lot of years, but I want to say I probably it was $20 or $25 per welcome basket. Mm-hmm. Let's call it $25. So I tend to, on average, have 60 turns per year at my property. That's kind of what I figured out as I do. So when I started doing the math, I actually made the decision after that first year that I would take that money and I would continue investing into amenities into the home that everybody could use. Mm-hmm. So I would bolster up my board games, or I would replace them more often, or I would add and again, you have to remember, this is before amenities were a huge thing now, right? Like now we're into these super amenities. So those things might be like, right, we have to turn back the clock. We're in 2017 and 2018 now, don't forget.
Yeah.
Most people weren't offering anything at that point, at least in terms of that. So I had found that that money was better served to have communal things inside the property that everybody could enjoy versus these individual welcome baskets. Mm-hmm. And so I've continued that on across all the properties all these years. Now, obviously, we're all upping our game every year. The game keeps getting upped, but it's the thought process and the strategy behind it has never changed. And I actually do lots of things where I offer, in my opinion, and more than in most markets, certainly like if we're comparing ourselves to everybody's super properties, I'm, maybe average in that case, but compared to sort of the general industry standards that exist out there outside of our elite groups, I feel my homes are very well stocked with kitchen items, cooking items, just everything that people would need for that particular stay, pending the market and the location. And nobody expects welcome gifts. Like I've never had a guest come to me and say, I'm upset at your $10,000 booking that I just had because there was no welcome gift waiting for me.
Right.
Instead, they say, I'm really happy with the cleanliness and your communication, and you offer so much. And we were cooking these gourmet meals and I found everything that I needed in the kitchen. And that made me so happy. I feel like people are, I think sometimes with some of these gimmicky items that people choose to do, we lose sight of making sure the foundational items are, and not only there, but we excel at the foundational items. And instead, people are skipping the foundations and then adding these extras. And what they fail to realize is the extra might give an initial wow factor, but it will not negate missing out on the foundational items. Where if you've got the foundational items exceptionally well, no one's missing out on that little extra.
Yep.
Has been my experience over all these years.
I totally agree. And I'm going to expand on the welcome baskets and move into the kitchen and say the exact same thing about coffee bars.
Or waffle bars or cereal bars or marshmallow bars.
Right. So you will hear gurus out there saying that you have to have these awesome coffee bars in order to have a 5-star property or to have 5-star reviews or to maximize your revenue. And in my experience, and again, I'm one person and I'm curious to hear yours, I do not supply any coffee in any of my markets, in any of my properties, and I am outperforming my market by heads and tails. And to your point, when you focus on the foundational elements, when have you ever had a horrible check-in experience, had a dirty place to stay, but you give a great review because they had a thing of decaf coffee in the room? Like, it doesn't happen. That's not the way life works, but that's what gurus will tell you these days, right? So what are your thoughts about having extensive coffee supplies?
So for me, I go back to operations. In the end, I have mid to large, not big. I think our largest properties we have a few 5 bedrooms. You would think I would know that off the top of my head. I'll say, for the record, I think the largest one is 5 bedrooms. So mid-large, but not like, certainly we see these mega properties now. So I've always done same-day turns. And we do a lot of same-day turns. And so I'm first and foremost, I believe our cleaners are our VIPs in this industry. I do not believe we can run our business without a really exceptional cleaning team. I would probably, over everybody else on my team, my cleaners I cherish them in every market I have. And so to me, I go back to, how do I maximize my revenue? How do I minimize my costs? And how do I keep my cleaners happy? Those are the 3 tenets I live by. And to me, those coffee bars and waffle bars or whatever the bars, it is just adding yet another chore to our cleaners lists. That's first and foremost. That's kind of, I was like, it's bad enough that we, again, over the years, in the 9 years I've been doing this, my running joke is, on Topsail Island in 2015, I offered toilet paper, salt and pepper, and towels, and I was the hero on that island. So obviously that bar has changed quite a bit over the years. But the point is that every single year we are asking our cleaners to do more and more and more. And to me, that is just one thing that I just don't actually believe moves the needle.
Right.
Like, if you have an exceptional property in an exceptional location with exceptional customer service and exceptional cleanliness, no one is going to not book one of my places because I don't offer the full coffee bar or the full waffle bar or whatever it is. To address your question, I do, and I'm not religious about it, but I do offer a Costco size Kirkland canister of coffee for those that really just need caffeine from an IV. So that they have something in the drip. But I don't regularly offer K-cups or syrups or all those other things. Yeah. But to me, it's like, if someone doesn't care what kind of coffee there is, there's coffee. If someone cares a lot, they brought their own coffee.
Right. That's really interesting. And again, I think what we're trying to highlight is that there are multiple ways to operate your business. Even Beata and I have different approaches to what we supply coffee-wise.
Of course.
And she gets a ton of 5-star reviews. I get a ton of 5-star reviews. The point is you can get 5-star reviews by focusing on the foundations, on the foundational elements. When you nail that, you're setting yourself up for success in your business. And so I couldn't agree more. Coffee is I love a good cup of coffee, but it is not something that's going to make or break your short-term rental business.
I agree.
All right. I'm curious to hear your perspective on this, because I see a lot of people posting online about creating passive income in the world of short-term rentals. And that makes me
That's
chuckle.
funny.
Now, if you own a property and you have a property manager, then you can create passive income. But if you are looking to manage on your own, this is the furthest thing away from passive income. What say you?
There is nothing passive about this business.
Yeah.
There just isn't. However, I will say, offering full service property management. So my owners, they're fairly passive. Now, obviously they're still involved in capital improvement decisions and, well, that's basically it. For the most part, they just get their monthly check, and that's why they hire me.
Yeah.
So for them, it's mostly passive, but every one of them still shows up at their property at least once, if not twice a year. We have a meeting, we probably have at least one conversation a month. So it's mostly passive for them. But no, I don't care how many automations you set up. I have, like I said, in 9 years, I feel like I have to, and across multiple properties, I posted thousands of sets of stays. By this point, you think I would have seen and heard everything. No, I don't think a week goes by where I'm like, I didn't see that one coming. Or where did that question come from? This industry keeps you on your toes. I enjoy it. There's a lot of things that are fun about it. There are a lot of things where I still fairly regularly reconsider my life choices sometimes. Do I really want to? And I've always covered the conclusion, yes, I do. Mm-hmm. But there's enough just stuff that can go wrong. And it's all humans, right? It's all humans with expectations. And no, I don't. I'm failing to understand how people call this business passive.
Yeah. And again, as you mentioned, if you own a short-term rental and you are hiring a property manager, yes, I totally agree. This can absolutely be passive. What I see on the internet is that, come learn how to manage your Airbnb and grow your passive wealth. And I'm like, listen, I hate to break it to you, but this just is a bunch of baloney,
As a tangent, I'm going to throw in one myth that is personally irksome is when, again, across the board, someone will say, no one will ever take care of your property like you do. A property manager, you'll never make more money with a property manager. Most of the time, that's probably true, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have some business skills, you've got some marketing skills, you've got customer service skills, you've got the time and energy to learn this industry, then yes, I agree. And the reality is, like every other industry on this planet, including realtors and property managers and electricians and plumbers, there's a lot of mediocre ones out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I have proof that I can make more money than many self-managers do.
Yeah.
And mine owners net more than they would if they were self-managing.
Yeah, totally.
And so and I would argue that in many cases, I can prove that I actually care more about the property. Like, I'm unique in that case, but I know I'm not the only one on this planet that feels that way. There are plenty of really qualified, very skilled, full service property managers out there who will literally adopt your home like your own, will treat it as such, and will help you make a lot of money.
Yeah.
We exist. I promise.
I have personally had more than one client where they were with a property manager. So I'm going to go on a tangent on your tangent, where not all property managers are created equal, right? 100%. So I have taken over from another property manager and I have more than doubled their income, right? Yeah. Because in my business, we are very proactive about revenue management, about maximizing not
Same girlfriend.
I know. We're cut from the same cloth. So I think, again, if you're listening and maybe you're with a property manager right now and you're thinking, hey, this property manager stuff is for the birds. I have to take over my own property in order to do well. But that stresses you out. Just know that, a solution for you might be just to find a different property manager,
Yes, we're not all created equal.
And to your point, self-managing is something that I teach, right? And I'm passionate about helping other people learn, but I also understand that it's not right for everyone. And don't let someone tell you, well, in order to be successful, you have to manage on your own. That's just
exactly
not
it's
true.
It's just not true. And the reality is it's, for some people, my journey, and I won't get into it now, but it was somewhat accidental. I did not grow up and say, I want to be a vacation rental property manager or even a self-manager. It just sort of organically grew into this. And I'm grateful for it. But I just happen to have this oddball accumulation of skills that I picked up in my corporate life in running a remodeling business with my semi-retired contractor father. He's my father, semi-retired contractor.
You haven't disowned.
I was trying to spit that out and I knew it was not going to come out well. But and then my background, like I said, is in supply chain logistics, but I spent a lot of time in corporate and customer service. And I worked for a corporation who excels in branding and marketing. And so all of those skills kind of came together and I couldn't have Frankenstein that, you take those online skill things. It didn't spit out, Beata would be a great property manager.
Right.
It sort of accidentally happened. I was like, wow, I'm actually really good at this. Yeah. But the reality is not everyone is.
Yeah.
And no longer I can't paint a mural. I can't change electricity. My husband's in IT. I cannot do at all what he does. I cannot be an accountant. I cannot be a bookkeeper. So I find it is this oddball myth out there that this truly is an industry. This truly is a business. And yet there's people out there saying every single person who's able to get a mortgage and buy an STR can be a good self-manager. That's just not true. I mean, we're not, there are plenty of examples of people who, you and I both excel at self-management, right? Yeah. And we both know lots of other people who are, but I also know lots of people who aren't, really shouldn't.
Yeah.
And they're stressed out and they're leaving money on the table, but they were told that the most money they can make is if they do it themselves. And they believe that myth so strongly that they're likely exit the industry instead of just hiring the right person to work with.
Yeah.
And that to me is sad because
sorry to interrupt.
There's options. No, I was trying to formulate my thought, but the reality is I think this whole episode is about, we want to dispel all the have tos. And that's yet another have to. You don't have to self-manage to be successful and profitable. Right. You just have to find the right partner.
Right. Absolutely right. And the other thing too is that even if you have the right skills and you have the time, if it doesn't light you up, if you don't enjoy it, don't do it. Don't, I feel like on a mission to help people not only build a business that they love, but build a life that they love. If you've got the time, the skills, the expertise to manage your own property, and it either stresses you the heck out, or if it causes problems with your family, or if it makes you feel overwhelmed, find a partner that can help you, whether it's a co-host or a property manager. There is no right or wrong. It's about what's right or wrong for you, right?
And in this season.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing that I have learned as I'm entering another new season of my life, as I'm approaching 50, is what was right for me in my 20s is not right for me in my 30s, is not right for me. and depending on whether you have kids or don't have kids, you're married, like we all go through different seasons. And that's something I continue to remind myself, because every once in a while I'll see someone who is a 25-year-old hustling genius. And I'm like, how come I'm not doing what they, and I'm like, oh yeah, because I've got these 75 other things going on right now that they just don't in this season of life, or, pick whatever season we're in. And I think that's another big thing that we don't talk about enough in this industry, and especially as women. I think it impacts women a little bit more than men, is that it is so easy to judge yourself against others or against some standards. And we forget that life and business are about these choices, and we'll likely make different choices in different seasons of our life. And that's okay.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I also have experienced this in my own personal life. Even different seasons, you talk about 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you can have different seasons of your life within a year.
Oh, well, that's true.
Or month time frame, right? And what your 100% is today may look very different 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks down the road, depending on what you're experiencing at that time. So I just want to, I think that's a really good point to call out, is that, seasons of life will change, which impact the decisions that we make. And don't fault yourself for going through a different season of life. It's okay.
Absolutely. I mean, I have a good girlfriend right now whose mom just came home in hospice. Mm-hmm. And she's in mystery. And guess what? What her next 3 to 6 months are going to look like are going to be very different than the last 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And she's blessed and grateful that she has the option to make those kinds of choices. So whether it's, an ailing parent, a sick child, a spouse, anything that happens to us in our day-to-day life, that's the beauty of running your own business, is that you're able to ebb and flow, and as life throws you all kinds of curveballs. And again, there's no one right way to do this, and you don't have to do anything. I think we're going to keep repeating that. You don't have to do anything specific. You do what's right for you in the moment, in the season, in your business, in your life.
I love that. I love that. All right. I do want to talk about something that we have to do.
Pay taxes.
Pay taxes and pay attention to our bottom line.
Yes. Profitability.
I know that this is a topic that you're passionate about because of your work experience in the corporate world. And I know for me, it is something I'm especially passionate about because of my work experience. But I think all too often, folks are purchasing properties that maybe they're not running a full analysis on, and they're finding themselves in situations like, whoa, all the people told me online it was important to find the right market. I found the right market, but I'm not profitable. Or, hey, I found the right market and I found a great property, but I'm not profitable. What are some of your best practices that you have learned in order to maximize profitability in your short-term rental business?
Don't follow what everybody else is doing online. I'm sorry. It's kind of true though. First and foremost, there probably was a period of time, maybe during 2020, 2021, where markets were important. Mm-hmm. I fundamentally believe now it is about the individual home. Mm-hmm. It is about location, proximity, views, which, incorporate location, mm-hmm. and, just the overall experience we're providing. Because I think what you and I and hopefully everybody else will agree on is that we're at the stage of this industry where it's about the guest experience. Mm-hmm. I guess if you're in the more true budget lodging, but even I'm finding those folks, like the feedback they're getting is like the industry expectation of an STR at this point has more and more experiential and not just plain lodging.
Yeah.
So to me, I mean, markets are, I mean, you have to have people coming to the area, right? Because if there's no one coming to the area, it doesn't matter if you have amazing views, because that's the other thing I'm watching. I spend most of my time paying attention to North Carolina, but North Carolina is one of those states where we have ocean, we have mountains, we have several cities, we've got many lakes. So we've got a lot of things going on in one state.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they'll either be these top cities that people are talking about and focusing on, but there's too many STRs there already. So that becomes an issue. Or on the other hand, you know, people are like, oh, I'll have to have views. So they'll buy this cabin with truly spectacular views, but the closest grocery store is over 30 minutes away. The closest thing that people would want to visit is 30 to 45 minutes away. And people are like, I put the sauna, I put the barrel sauna, I put the hot tub, I have the fire pit, I've got the shell crate chairs or whatever everyone's doing. I don't get it. I'm not booking, or I'm booking at $100 a night. And it's like, there's not enough people coming to your town to warrant this.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess it's hard. To me, it actually is heartbreaking watching this, because for most people who are getting into this industry, they are either pumping what would have been their retirement accounts, or, you know, they're kind of the lifelong savings into this, you know, down payment and, you know, uplift or whatever they're doing. And they truly still believe the myth that if you build it, they will come. Yeah. And they truly don't understand why that's not happening. But the sad reality is, if you bought the wrong house, there's not a ton you can do to correct it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I actually did an on-site audit about a month or two ago, and with a couple who was lovely and had like a really, really cool place, but there was a lot of things going on, and the right option for them was to sell.
Yeah.
I couldn't in good faith say, pump more money into this place. It doesn't make sense to.
Yeah.
So, you know, how do I stay profitable? I do a lot of market research in terms of how many visitors come to an area on any given year, how many STRs currently exist at there's a big thing, 1 bedroom versus 5 bedroom versus 4 bedroom. So it's not just pure number of STRs, it's also the type of STR. But I also try to find things that people aren't offering. Like, for example, the one place I did buy in Raleigh, which that's another story for another podcast for another day, but it really had to do with tax. I bought that house for taxes, not because I thought it was going to be the most profitable STR in my portfolio. And Raleigh is a market, from a real estate standpoint, we're still appreciating at a pretty great trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
And it was definitely a fix and flip. I do not buy cream puff properties at all, because I don't think there's profitability in them. And what it turned out was I think there's literally 3,000 STRs in Raleigh. In addition to I can't even count how many hotels exist, right? So talk about competition. Well, my particular property is a half mile to NC State, like truly walkable. Guess what I did? Full on wolf pack. A night of wolf pack. Like, I've never done that. I've never done the murals before, and I lean so heavily into the theming. The average 4-bedroom in Raleigh is making 30 to 40,000. I'm at 79,000 for this year, and I launched in March, and the first 2 months were definitely very slow going. So I have no doubt next year I'll exceed 100,000 easily. But I literally had to do the reverse engineering. What is being offered? What is not being offered? What is needed and what is desired? And then offer the thing that no one else is offering, but there is still desire for. I mean, it's basic economics.
Yeah. Supply and demand, baby.
And so, like, replicate that. So, I have a little property in a very small town that actually has a bizarre amount of tourists. And all the properties there are like grandma's yard sale blew up in your house. Well, what I mean, and the funny thing is, that's kind of the vibe that people are generally going for. Like, they're okay with that. Like, that's kind of
what's available
and kind of what's expected. Well, yeah. I went the complete opposite direction, and I took this tiny 2-bedroom. It's literally 1,000 square feet. I added a hot tub. I fenced in the yard. I put exceptional decor. I I painted the ceilings black. I painted a bedroom pink. Like I just went full on into this black, white, pale pink theme. It's killing it.
Yeah.
Because nothing else is available that's like that. So will I attract everybody? No, I'm sure some people look at my place and be like, this is hideous. I don't like it, or I hate it, or this is just weird, or whatever people's opinions are. But there's clearly enough people that do want something different. And like in this industry, we don't need thousands and thousands of guests a year at any one property. On average, we need about 60 sets of guests.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. So good. The other thing I'm just going to encourage our listeners when we talk about profitability is we have to actually look at our numbers. Like,
yes,
you have
every month, minimum
month, every month. And you know, from being in the Achievers Club, we are looking at numbers every week, right? So, you know, some people look at their numbers once a year if they're lucky, before tax time, you know, I mean, so I just feel like it's really important if you are listening or watching this episode and you're like, I'm one of those folks. I'm just looking at my numbers every once in a blue moon or right before I get my taxes done. If you make it a habit to pay attention to your income and your expenses on a monthly basis at a minimum, I have a feeling you're going to see improvement because what gets measured gets improved.
Not only that, but I guess I would, in addition to everything you said, which I 100% agree on, and it goes back to those have-tos, right? Is profit. Did you ever notice online that most everybody only talks about their gross rental income?
Right. Oh, totally.
Right. And so it doesn't matter if your gross rental income is 200,000 and your expenses are 198,000.
Right.
Right. Like I'll take one of my 80,000 gross rental income that only has $30,000 in expenses any day of the week. But I think it goes back to a lot of these have-tos, whether we're talking, you know, linen, sheets, bars, amenities, you know, electricity, the cleaning, that all these things. When we have this belief system and we buy into the belief that you have to do these certain things and you don't look at profitability as a goal, if I wanted to just basically offer everything that I possibly could want as a guest and say, you know, here's all the things. I'm not running a business anymore. I'm running a hospitality charity at that point.
Yeah. And we don't want that.
And so I think at some point, you have to look at your numbers and you have to do the evaluations. And, you know, if you're bringing in, you know, and then there's positive ROI, right? So I spent $10,000, like, again, the little 2-bedroom as an example, I spent $10,000 on a hot tub because I bought a really nice hot tub and I didn't buy a dinky little, you know, whatever. For that property, that feels insane, right? But I can prove that in year one, I've more than made up for that $10,000 hot tub. And then therefore it becomes even more profit. But buying new white towels every single month is not increasing my revenue.
Right.
That is now just an expense, right? So there's a difference between an investment that has positive ROI, which I 100% believe in. And let's face it, we're all wrong sometimes, right? Like sometimes we have to take educated guesses and we're not always right. But as long as it's an educated guess and the goal is to have positive ROI, those expenses make sense. Then obviously there truly are some cost of doing business expenses.
Yeah.
But then there's a whole host of expenses that are really either optional or just are like, what kind of pots and pans are you offering, right? If you're spending $100 every 3 months, maybe it makes more sense to spend $300 every 2 years, right? Those are all of these operational kind of decisions that eat into our profitability. And it's things for some reason. Yeah, I was gonna say for some reason. I know why. It's not sexy. No one talks about operations. It is so not sexy. But profitability is sexy. So therefore, I think operations is sexy.
There you go, baby. I love it. All right. We have limited time. I have to move to the lightning round because I need to ask you very important questions. So I'm going to ask you to answer with the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh, with pressure.
Question number 1 is, where is your favorite place to vacation?
Disney cruise.
Ooh, I've never done a Disney cruise before.
I'm done 11. I love them so much.
Now, are you a Disney World fan too?
Not so much. I've only been 3 times in my entire life.
Really? Okay, now I have never heard of such a thing. So a Disney cruise fan, but not necessarily a Disney World fan. What is it about the Disney cruises that you love?
It's everything that we're trying to do. It's the exceptional food, it's the exceptional service, exceptional cleanliness, exceptional guest experience.
Yeah.
And I mean, as my kids are now 18 and 15. And so we started when they were 5 and 8 or 3 and 5. It doesn't matter. They were very little. So we've grown up on it. I love the fact that there's something for everyone on this one ship.
Yeah.
And therefore we can do things as a foursome, as a twosome, as a onesome, as a threesome, as a whatever sum. And then we all gather together for dinner. That has always been our family rule, is that no matter what we're doing, we eat dinner together. Everything else is negotiable and debatable. So I've always enjoyed it because for me, it was actually a true vacation as opposed to a trip, which is 2 different things when you have kids.
Oh boy, is that not the truth? Okay, next question. What's one place you've never been that you want to visit?
Japan.
Okay. Now I've heard phenomenal things about Japan, and the people that I know who have visited Japan continue to go back over and over and over again because they love it so much.
It's on the bucket list. I got to just make some time.
On the bucket list. Call Tracy Northcott when you go over.
Okay.
What's one thing you know now that you wished you knew when you were starting in the world of short-term rentals?
Just how people-y this business is.
Yes.
I mean, between the guests, the vendors, there's a lot of people involved, and people have emotions and expectations, and that can be a lot sometimes.
Yeah.
And it kind of doesn't ever end. Like, it's just this perpetual people-y-ness, which for the most part, I do enjoy, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be doing this.
Right.
But the same thing that actually can bring a ton of joy in this industry can be the thing that can emotionally cripple you sometimes. And I don't know that if I had truly known how intense it was going to be, if I would have embarked on it to begin with.
What are some of the things that you have in place now to shield you from the moments where the amount of people-iness is bringing you down? Like, can you recognize that? And what do you do about it?
Yes. And I'm still not all the way there. That is definitely a work in progress. I will say, again, being in this industry for a while, the last year or two, the expectations across the board just have been escalating. I use digital guest guides that have been helping, a lot more automations, a lot more sort of messaging being sent out proactively. I've actually started resorting to, and this is going to feel counterproductive, but I've actually resorted to directly texting my guests within the month of their staying to simply point them to all the different resources and make sure they understand that they're available. And then reiterate that I'm a person and I have a life and a lot of other things going on. And that if they use these resources available to them, they'll have a wonderful stay. And that actually tends to do 2 things. It humanizes the experience. And so for me, I prefer to run my business at this point. I don't have VAs. I don't use AI. It really is mostly me. And I've found ways to make it work. And I do find that when I humanize it, then people tend to be a little bit more understanding and a little less people-y.
Yeah.
But I also, I'm also continuing to find ways to add better automations and better just boundaries in terms of what people's expectations are, and vetting, or like, and then with vendors, for example, I often would spend a lot of time having a vendor that I know is not working out, but trying to make it work. And now I'm much more quicker at, I see the signs, I see where this is going. It's just best that we cut.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to create the role to fit the person, I'm getting better at making sure I'm finding the right person for the role that
Right.
I need.
Yeah. Absolutely. Amen.
Work in progress, though. Total work. That is my.
Aren't we all?
My.
Aren't we all?
It has to be, because it just continues to evolve.
Yeah. All right. Next question. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, well, I get like, I'm stumped because I get such good advice that I've. You know what? This is what's popping into my brain, and it may not be popular because I'm going to use the G word, but it can be extrapolated in any way you want. Rejection is God's protection.
Oh, I love that.
And it rhymes, so it's stuck in my head. And I know I've seen different variations of it, but that's the one that I remind myself of. Because so many times, whether you lose a client, lose a guest, lose a vendor, lose a house, right? Like every single time that I've pursued something that ended up either ending what I felt was prematurely, or it was an outcome I didn't want, or didn't get the outcome that I thought I wanted, with a little bit of hindsight, every single time I can look back and say, dodged a bullet there.
Yes.
And so I try to truly, especially when something hurts or is really disappointing, I just try to remind myself, Beata, rejection is God's protection.
I love that. I've actually never heard that phrase. And I love that so much. And I literally just had an experience this morning where I had a cleaner just quit. Like,
that sucks. I'm so sorry.
It sucks. It sucks rocks. It definitely sucks. And, I always look at opportunities I try to look at opportunities in a positive light. And I have been saying to my husband for months, I really, really need to expand my cleaning team. I really need to expand my cleaning team. I see that as a barrier to growth. And I need to really be intentional about growing my team. And we just had a conversation about it this morning before this cleaner quit. Since that cleaner quit, in a matter of 2 hours, I have interviewed 4 amazing people that literally just fell in my lap. And I think that rejection is God's protection. It's a different spin, but when one door closes, another door opens, And
I have the same thing a handful of times. And cleaners is our biggest one, where we're like, oh, yeah. I had one in one market where I knew it wasn't quite working, but it wasn't bad enough for me to, that in between where you're unhappy, but you're not unhappy enough.
Yes.
And she up and quit on me with no notice. And that hacks me off to no end. But you know what? Very quickly, I ended up pivoting, and I found the most amazing person that I'm so thrilled with and so happy with. And in the end, rejection was God's protection.
Amen. All right. Last question. What's one thing and/or person that you're grateful for today?
Oh, I'm grateful for you.
Oh,
and you know why? Because I am someone who I really love sharing my wisdom and my knowledge, and I feel like I've learned and earned so much of it over the years. But I don't really have a formal platform that I talk to people on, and I don't have a lot of opportunities to do this. So I'm actually really grateful that you invited me on. You're going to let me share. You're going to let me be part of your audience, so that I'm hoping if I could save one person from doing something they don't really want to do that they were told they have to do, that I feel like I've made my mark on the world.
And you certainly have. I have no doubt about it. And I'm equally as grateful for you for being willing to share not only your experience, but being willing to step outside the box and talk about topics that may not be as popular, right? So
I know I'm going to make a bunch of people mad. I'm sure if they listen to this, then that's okay. I'm not everybody. What did I say? I'm not everybody's cup of whiskey.
I love it. Beata, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.
Now, before you go, I want to give a quick shout out to some of the amazing women inside the Female Short-Term Rental Investors Facebook group. Just 3 hours ago, someone posted, "We're working on expanding our contract for our short-term rental, and I'm curious if there has been a situation you've experienced with a guest that you now must accommodate for in your house rules or in your contract. As an example, telling guests not to move furniture around after finding a mattress outside. We've had a few women chime in already with such great ideas. Susan Wees says no candles of any kind except batteries with LED flames. Valerie Sparks says no brought-in speaker, no glitter, no tape on the walls, no confetti, no balloons with confetti. Adriana Ingui says no self-tanners, no dyeing hair, no self-businesses like hair cutting services or brothels. These are all such great suggestions. No subletting, Andy Tolbert shares. I couldn't agree with these more. Such great ideas here, and I know that they're going to keep rolling in. So ladies, thank you for your input. And with that, that wraps up this episode. I hope you have a phenomenal week ahead, and I will see you very soon.